were at the AVICC in Courtney or Campbell River, one of the two.
I was the one that spoke there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see you operating in Oceanside area too, so I'm always happy to see that happening. It's once I learn more about how quickly Broome grows, and it needs constant vigilance. So, but
well,
I won't.
I've already given my talk. I don't really have much more to say.
We can talk about what is it, hogweed or something like that as well. My dad got a burn from that stuff, and it was lasted a couple months. I think he gave a presentation on that too. Alrighty, so that's 1:30. So we'll call to order. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting today, and we're conducting our business on mostly the territories of the Nshonals people. More specifically, our offices are located on Hupatchisitt and Shot territory, but we're all throughout the West Coast as well. Some of us may be dialing in from Coast Salish territory, or maybe even the Kwanghan-speaking people's territory, so we can add them to the mix as well. I would note that today's meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube, and that if you wish to attend, hopefully you set that up beforehand, because an invitation can be sent if you register before the meeting starts. But if not, and you're in YouTube land, we don't really get your chats. So the best way to contact us for any questions for the question period at the end would be to send an email to responses@acrd.bc.ca. And from that, we do have the approval of the agenda before us. I believe we may have a few more items and or materials to add to the agenda. So I'd like to call on Ms. Wendy Thompson to fill us in on that, please. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so we have two items for consideration as late items. Under section 8I, a request for decision options to withdraw Salmon Beach from the West Coast Transit Service. And under section 9.1A, development variance application DVC 0007 Lang 11506 Avenue. Some correspondence with respect to that application.
Okay, so that'll be 9.1
A 9.1A.
Okay, and the withdrawal is going to be under 8. Sorry, could you go back? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, 8I.
8I.
So at the end of request for decisions.
Okay, 8I. Are there any other items to be amended onto or off of the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended? Thank you, Director McNabb, seconded by Director McCarthy. Do we have any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay. My apologies. I'm a bit under the weather, so if I sound different, it's not a deep fake. It's actually me. That comes down to declarations. Does anyone have any conflicts of interest or gifts exceeding $250 of value? This isn't the only time you can excuse yourself, but it is the only time to talk about gifts. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is the adoption of minutes. First item is item A, the AVRA Advisory Committee meeting dated February 23rd, 2021. Would anyone like to move adoption? Thank you, Director McCarthy, seconded by Director McNabb. Okay, with that, any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. That brings us to the item B, which is the Committee of the Whole meeting dated February 24th, 2021. Thank you, Director Cole, seconded by Director Bodner. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, for those of you on the phone, which is, I believe, just Director Coots, I'll just assume your acquiescence is silence, or rather vice versa. And if you have anything to add, please just interrupt with your voice.
Thank you. So you know, I'm on the phone as well. It's Director Minions.
Oh, well, you show up as just like as if you're here normally. So that's
Strange.
That's good. But yeah, please do so though. And I'll assume that your silence is acquiescence throughout the meeting as well. Okay, so item C is the Board of Directors meeting dated February 24th, 2021.
Move adoption.
Thank you, Director McNabb, seconded by Director Cole. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. All right. Ooh, lots of minutes today. D is Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee meeting dated February 25th, 2021.
Move adoption.
Thank you, Director McNabb, seconded by Director Paulson. All of those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Item E is the 2021 Parcel Tax Roll Review Panel meeting dated February 25th, 2021. Thank you, Director McNabb and Director Bodner. Comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Motion carried. Item F, West Coast Committee meeting dated March 3rd, 2021. Director Steer and Director Cole. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. And item G, Committee of the Whole meeting dating March 3rd, 2021. This is illegal camping. Thank you, Director Steer and Director Bodner. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, that brings us to petitions, delegations, and presentations. Normally, we have a 10-minute maximum for the presentation part of the conversation. However, that does not count the questions and answers and comments. Now, when we hit 10 minutes, I'll interrupt you just by speaking. But if you see me when you're giving your presentation, Joanne, if I hold up a 2 or a 1, that just means how many minutes you have left. If I think you're close to the end, I probably won't hold up any at all, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. But just in the name of fairness, when we have a lot of speakers, of which we don't this time around, usually we do that. That being said, I'd like to welcome Ms. Joanne Sales from the Broombusters Invasive Plant Society regarding broombusters and Scotch broom invasion in the ECRD. Thank you and welcome.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Joanne Sales and the founder and director of Broombusters Invasive Plant Society. Scotch broom would certainly be classified as a noxious weed everywhere if it were not already so widespread. Regardless of its classification, we have to regard it as the aggressive, invasive plant that it is, and here is why. These photos are from New Zealand. This is a real ecological disaster. They didn't know what would happen when they cut down their forest with broom and gorse nearby. We do, but even still, this could happen on Vancouver Island, and this is why. Broom spreads rapidly in dense thickets anywhere in the sun. A single plant can produce 18,000 seeds, viable in soil for the next 30 years. So we see it on vacant properties, farms, investment properties, highway, hydro lines, and any previously forested land. Broom grows huge quickly. Okay, it crowds out native species, leads to a dramatic loss of diversity. It's toxic, wildlife can't eat it. And that stump you see on the right, it looks like a tree, but broom is a woody weed. It is not a tree. Fire danger. Okay, it's Scotch broom is a volatile flash fuel, according to Terry Peters, Fire Chief Powell River. It will increase the wildfire's fuel load, escalate the fire's intensity, compromise fire situations, and make fires more difficult to fight. The reason for this is because it has naturally occurring dry branches and high oil content. So along with the fire danger, the broom on utility corridors creates an easy path for fire to travel across the island. This is something that's of great concern for us that know how flammable broom is. Broom limits forestry growth. Broom grows faster than young trees, takes the water and nutrients and overpowers them. And you can see how the broom has moved into the young forest area, and those plants will overpower and limit the growth of those trees. How bad does it get? Really bad. So how can we prevent this? These pictures are acres and acres of broom. This is happening all over Vancouver Island. The photo on the left was cleared for development years ago and then abandoned. The huge field on the right was cleared only a year ago, but already broom is taking over. So how does this happen? Okay, if you remove the forest cover, degrade the soil, and do nothing to restore vegetation, broom wins and we lose. It's because broom does not grow in the shade, but only in the sun. So common practice on Vancouver Island, unfortunately, is to buy land, harvest the trees, and leave the land bare, allowing Scotch broom to take over. So forests are coming down all over Vancouver Island, and this should be of great concern to elected officials at all levels of government. It's a great source of grief, actually, for residents when we see our forests be destroyed. The tourist industry will suffer as well, as people just don't want to see this. Many of the deserts around the world were created by human practices. Desertification, the making of deserts. We know what deserts look like in Africa and the Middle East, but in the Pacific Northwest, this is what a desert looks like. You've heard of Ivy deserts. This is a broom desert, and only broom will grow here. So broom busters are concerned what and who will stop broom from taking over once the trees are gone, because this leads to this and this leads to this. As we all know, the climate change clock is ticking and we're running out of time. We know what to do. In farming, practice regenerative agriculture, never leave land bare. Return to smaller farms and put young farmers on them. Use renewable energy and massively increase forest cover on the planet. Why is the director of Broom Busters bringing this up? Because the practices that will prevent broom from taking over Vancouver Island are the same practices that will increase our chances of surviving climate change. In both cases, action needs to be taken quickly. And here's some people taking action. In 2020, over 400 volunteers cut broom for over 5,000 hours. These were obviously pre-COVID pictures. In previous years, pre-COVID, we would have over 500 or 600 volunteers. We had quite a few volunteers out in the Port Alberni area, and we now have an inspired group in Ucluelet. So Broom Busters started in 2006, and now Port Alberni was participating in 2007, but all of these municipalities and more are participating. When we started, we had two myths to fight through. People said, oh, you can't stop broom, but they're just using the wrong technique. You can stop broom, but you have to cut broom in bloom, and when cut properly, the method works. Pulling mature broom, excavating, mowing, poisoning, and poor cutting does not work. The other myth is that broom is naturalized. It'll just become one of the other plants. That's not true. Broom will continue to take over. So the key strategies for Broom Busters is cut broom in bloom, empower the community. I already explained about don't use poison and don't pull. Containment, we go after advancing edge and new infestations first rather than the dense and large infestations. Stop the spread, create shade, preserve forests, trees, and ground cover, and cooperation between municipalities, media, ministries, groups, communities, and volunteers. Here's how you cut. You cut it at ground level with loppers. So you would have to get below those 3 branches sticking out to the single root that is going into the ground. Most broom cut properly will die in the summer's heat. We stop cutting when the seed pods form. Here's some photos from broom busting in the Alberni Valley. We actually thought we were cutting in Port Alberni in some of these areas, and then we learned, oh, we're not, like the visitor center. Okay, but this is all areas that we have cut, and Rogers Creek. Last year, a group cut on Victoria Drive. We had a couple cuts on Sprout Lake. But volunteers can only do so much, and we need help. We need stronger laws. We need greater observation about what's going on in development properties, farmland, investment properties, and absentee, where absentee land owners are. Okay, so this is a great concern here. The BC Hydro transmission lines, they are covered with broom and they're spreading seeds across the island, creating broom forests and fire hazards. So when a forest is cut down anywhere around there, the seeds are already there because of the hydro lines. And then you have a broom forest instead of our native natural forest regrowing, which is what we want. Also, like on the coastlines, this is actually Savory Island, but the same thing can happen anywhere on the islands. Forests and farmlands are cleared by investors, put up for sale, or left uncared for. Invasive plants move on to newly cleared land, parks, and beaches, and we must protect our lands regardless of who owns them. So this is how Broom Buster helps. We have volunteers that will come out and cut. We provide tools and signs, publicity and use of website, training of leaders and volunteers, and no charge for this. It's what we do. And this is what we're asking the ACRD to do. Is this year we would need help with chipping of piles on RCRD roads just outside of Port Alberni and Ucluelet. You know, it's not like anywhere, you know, in the area, but there are volunteers that want to be cutting, and it's a shame to say, oh, you have to stop right here. Invasive plants cannot be delayed. They require immediate action. And if we don't act, it will be too late for our children, just as it is too late to do anything about what happens in New Zealand. So why cut the blooming broom? Well, we do it for future generations, and we need your help. And I think I'm less than 10 minutes.
Yep.
Okay, let me
perfect.
try to stop sharing.
Great.
Yeah.
Now, do we have any comments or questions? Thank you. I have Dr. Cote. Please go ahead.
Thank you for this through the chair or through the board. Ms. Sales, I know that Sprout Lake has some residents that are very actively cutting broom. Julie McCaig is the lead in this area. We have a couple of other residents that also are taking action. So I'm seeing that your request to the ACRD is regarding chipping.
Well, that's mostly the way we dispose of the broom. And Broom Busters actually can pay for some of the chipping, and that's what we ended up doing with the broom that we cut in ACRD last year. It's just that I think that there's some times when it would be better if the district itself could help with the chipping. Chipping is what you do because it goes when there's no seed pods yet, then the broom is harmless, and so you just chip it in place. It's the cheapest way to dispose of it, better than burning. Now, the Faber Road group that you were just speaking of, they've been taking it to the landfill, which fortunately the landfill is accepting it free of charge. But that's time that they could actually be cutting, and that's what I think they would rather be doing. Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have Director Bodner next.
Thank you. That was a good presentation. It was a real good eye opener. I didn't really realize how aggressive it was. Even if we say in the valley or whatever, stay out on this broom and seem to be ahead of it, what kind of responsibility would you give something like Mosaic when they've got acres and acres of land, and after the trees are gone, there's nothing but sunshine?
Yeah. That's one place where you have a lot more power than we do. So, there should be regulations. I know that the forest companies do not want broom to take over their forest land. I think there's techniques that could be better than using poison, like stopping the broom from growing on the roads, the logging roads, so that it's getting into the forested areas. But in their defense, the hydro lines are the worst offenders. And that's not just in the forest land, but it's also just goes right up against people's private property. I know there was a farmer in Bowser area who finally got them to clear the hydro lines to clear the broom because there were cougars that were hiding in the broom and killing his sheep. So, it's definitely, broom forests are not what we want. So I don't know what their responsibility is, but I think it's something that the government as a whole and on all levels of government need to address so that we can protect our lands. I mean, these are our children's lands. They don't belong to anybody. They're the lands of Vancouver Island, and they're limited. Oh, I can't hear you, but
Please go ahead, Diane.
I was just saying thank you, and I really appreciated the presentation. It was great.
thank you.
Yes. Are there any other comments? Director Shannon and then Director Roberts.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Ms. Sales, for the presentation. I do have a question regarding volunteers, because I know there's a community hall in my area that spoke about getting involved with the broom busting. And I'm just wondering how 2021 is going to look for volunteers with pandemic, and perhaps maybe you can reach out to me later for some more detailed information of how somebody might get involved and what it might look like this year versus previous years. Thank you.
Well, last year, we weren't gathering in groups. And so we actually did last year what we will probably do this year. And that is that we handed out loppers to volunteers, and they had their own loppers. So we would choose an area, like if you say around the hall that people want to have cleared. So a family or an individual would get loppers to use for the whole season, unless they're just doing it once or twice, and then we would clean the loppers. But giving people loppers was great, because actually, having everybody come on a Saturday morning, that's a very limited amount of time, and you get very little done. But if you have the loppers and you have a goal, a collective goal, people are going to go out on their own, and they're going to get so much more done. So actually, this is just like Zoom. We're not going to stop doing Zoom because it actually works well. And actually giving out loppers is actually working well. So I'm asking you to get in touch with me, and I'm happy to support that group. One thing is some groups in some areas decide they want to become broom busters, and then they're actually, broom busters and part of our organization. We also help groups in sort of an auxiliary way, so like Gabriola Island started as official broom busters, and now they've just got it under control and they just do it themselves. And Bowen Island is doing the same thing this year too. We're helping them, we're advising them, and then they're taking care of all of the, the cutting and the organizing themselves. So, because the ACRD is so large, sometimes it would be more effective to become part of broom busters, and we love that. And sometimes it's just we're willing to help in whatever way that we can. So just let us know how we can help you. Ucluelet is becoming involved much more seriously this year, and one of our concerns is that the Ucluelet city line, Ucluelet is all fine with this, but then right outside of that, the broom on Highway 4, on the way to the visitor center, needs to be cut down too. So that's why we need to involve the ACRD in cleaning up Ucluelet.
Okay, that sounds great. I have Director Roberts, and then Director Cole, and then Director Shannon.
Yeah, through the chair.
Oh, sorry, no, sorry, I did it again. I accidentally. Director Shannon, if you wanted to go, please go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to follow up. Ms. Sales, if you could just send to staff your email address so we have your contact information, that would be great. Thanks.
Actually, I should have mentioned our website. Our website is one of the greatest sources of information, and we have videos about how to cut it. So whenever you are working with volunteers, we're going to put up another video as well. Make sure that anybody that goes out, because I can't go everywhere anymore because we've expanded too much, make sure that everybody looks at the video before they start cutting, because if they go out and they start cutting broom this high off the ground, it's just going to come back, and then everybody's going to say, oh, you can't get rid of broom. And it's not because you can't, it's because it was done wrong. So our website is one way to get hold of me. And yes, I will send my email address.
Great, sounds good. Sorry, Director Roberts, you're up now. And then Director Cole.
Yes, through the chair. Thank you, Ms. Sales. Actually, I reside in Area F, so not too far from where you live. And I live up off of Middlegate Road, and the local people up here in our community are getting busy broom busting as well. And that video really helps a lot. And suggesting that you shouldn't pull it out by the roots is another good idea, because I know that some people have done that, but we're trying to learn out here and cut it off, as you show in the video, close to the ground. We also have another issue with gorse. So hopefully we can get all that sorted out, but I really appreciate your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're bringing up two issues. One is gorse. Gorse looks a lot like broom, but it has thorns. And unfortunately with gorse, you can't cut it. You actually have to poison it. And so that's why he's talking about the patch on Middlegate. They've been trying for years to get rid of that patch, and they can't. It's really, really hard. But the reason why you don't pull the broom is because if it's a single stalk, if it's just like it's young and you can pull it up and it doesn't disturb the soil, then do that, and do that now. But if it's a branching root and it disturbs the soil, all of those seeds that are vital for 30 years will start to sprout, and you'll end up with more broom. So, excavators and all those kinds of things that turn the soil, people think it looks really good right now, but it's not going to look good next year, because all those seeds that see the sun will sprout.
Good to know. I have Director Cole next.
It's just nice to see you again, Ms. Sales. You did come and present with us in Ucluelet, and I assume that it's going well with the Rotary because they had touched on the broom in the past and that you guys are going to collaborate.
Mhm.
And I think it's great. And I do think that Highway 4, all the things, that side of Ucluelet, certainly there's a lot of broom out there too. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for encouraging me to get in touch. So,
Hey, I think that's it. Are there any other comments? Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank
Wilfred
you.
after.
Oh, okay, Wilfred, thank you.
Just a question about poison. Do you ever suggest the use of poison? I know that forestry have been using it along the highway out at Sprout Lake. And just to make note that you've spelt Sprout Lake incorrectly, it's
oh,
an A in it, not a U.
okay.
Okay.
I'm too much of a farmer.
So do you ever encourage the use of poison then?
The problem with poison, first of all, the fact that it's poison and it gets into our waterways, but also what we have witnessed is that it looks like it kills the broom, but then like a year or two later, you'll see it starting to grow again from the roots. So it doesn't actually kill the roots. Okay, so, and it's so easy so often to just go along and just do one cut as opposed to spraying all over, the plant, that it's just, poison is not the most effective way. That being said, there are times when I would love to use poison because sometimes it's a single shoot, you cut it and everybody's happy, right? But sometimes it gets all gnarly, you can't find the base, or it's got, multiple stalks. So there are times when I think poison is the right thing to do. But in general, it's not.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Coots.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to say thanks for the presentation. And I've heard your presentation over the years, and the knowledge I gained through it has actually enabled me to help control the broom in our traditional territory down in around Henderson Lake. I think I need to impress upon the other area directors and the other directors that we need to get on the private land owners, and the Crown Corridor owners, and impress upon them the importance of dealing with these invasive species, because that's how the broom is entering my traditional territory and my treaty settlement lands. In fact, is through the logging roads that Mosaic and Western are in control of, and they're doing nothing as far as I can see to help mitigate the situation. So I think some education and some lobbying is needed in our future, because it's becoming prevalent in the Mantaria and along the Canal Main on the way down through the Alberni Inlet into my territory. So I'd just like to say thank you, and we have a lot of work ahead of us on that lobbying side. So thank you for that. Thanks.
Well, when we say, we need help, from elected officials, I mean, if we had a wish list, it would be to prohibit allowing broom and gorse to grow onto properties that are newly cleared, and to gradually diminish the areas that are already infested. But there's really no excuse for people to allow broom at this point and with this knowledge to infest new areas.
Well said. Okay, with that in mind, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the board for coming to present to us. I think this is something where every year we do need a reminder that this is something that is never stopping. You can't negotiate with broom. So I think I'd like to thank you, and look forward to seeing you again. And
Okay, well, thank you all very much.
have a good one.
Bye.
John, you're muted.
And I was doing so well too. Okay. I'm skipping number 6 because we don't have any correspondence for action. Under number 7, we have 3 items for correspondence for information. Something from Ice-T, something from Papa, and something from Williams Lake. Is there anything anyone would like to pull out? And if not, you can feel free to move to receive them all.
Chair, I'd move receipt.
Thank you, Director Beckett. Do I have a seconder? Everyone. I'll put Director Roberts. Okay. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay. That brings us to item 8. First up are the Salmon Beach Committee Terms of Reference Amendment and Bylaws. Amendments and bylaws.
Did you want me to speak to that, Mr. Chair, or?
Yeah, we might as well have a quick overview and then we'll get right to Director Roberts.
Great. Okay, so the Salmon Beach Committee met on February 8th and they reviewed their terms of reference and have agreed to several housekeeping amendments, considering the regional district strategic plan and all their decisions, and changing the chairperson of the committee to be the director for Area C. So this committee was formed by bylaw. So I've drafted a new bylaw with these updates for consideration of 3 readings and adoption by the board, and then approval of the updated terms of reference.
Alrighty, thank you. So, Dr. Roberts, once you finished reading the first reading, when we get to second and third reading, you can just say move second and third reading. I think everyone will kind of understand there. But if you wanted to start off with the motion, that would be great. I'm assuming you would do so.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So 8A, the request for decision, and the Salmon Beach Committee Terms of Reference Amendment and Bylaw A1088. Firstly, that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors give first reading to the Salmon Beach Committee Bylaw A1088, 2021.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Steer. Okay, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
Second reading.
Thank you. So moved. Do we have a seconder? Director Cote, thank you. Comments? Dr. Roberts, do you have comments? Or just getting ready to vote? All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
Third reading.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Shannon. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. An adoption?
Adoption, yes.
Okay. Moved by Director Roberts, seconded by Director Cote. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. And then approve.
And then finally, that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors approve the amended terms of reference for the Salmon Beach Committee for 2021 as presented.
Thank you. Seconded. Thank you, Director Beckett. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, that was great. That brings us to item 8B, which is the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee Terms of Reference. I think much the same. Director Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'll make the motion that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors approve the amended terms of reference for the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Service Committee for 2021 as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Paulson. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Took a chance there that no one had any comments on it. Next up is the UBCM Emergency Operations Centers and Training Grant. I'm wondering if that's going to be Jenny or Charlie.
I'm here to speak for Heather.
Oh, thank you.
On behalf of Heather, the EOC Training and Supplies Grant, it's amount of $25,000. The deadline is March the 26th. And Heather would like a board resolution just to support the grant application. She'll be meeting with the city next week to discuss the details of the grant application, which will include training exercise, as it's been quite a while since we've done one and people's skills are getting a little rusty, and maybe additional supplies to the EOC for the coming year.
Okay, thank you for that, Charlie. So we have a motion here. Director Roberts, So moved. And Director Beckett, second. Okay, any further comments? All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Okay, next up is item D, which is the Alberni Valley Landfill Gas Monitoring Partnership Project, and it's an agreement with VIU. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this project is an excellent opportunity for the regional district. We're going to be partnering with the Vancouver Island University. They will have basically be bringing out their mobile monitoring van, which is state-of-the-art technology. They've got a mobile mass spectrometer, and they're going to be surveying the landfill for landfill gas in minute amounts. So we're going to get a really precise measurement. We're hoping to correlate that with some static measurement equipment on site, which will give us long-term monitoring into the future. And yeah, so this project has been pushed forward from 2020 due to COVID, but they've now received funding, and we'd like to move forward with this project.
Great, thank you. Any comments or questions? The motion is on the top of the 4th page. Thank you, Director Paulson. Go ahead.
I'll just read the motion if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Please go ahead.
Move that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional Board of Directors approve entering into an agreement with Vancouver Island University for the Alberni Valley Landfill Gas Monitoring Project. Not gas motoring, but gas monitoring.
And do we have a seconder? Director Bodner, thank you. All right, any further comments? Director Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. Did we have a grant for that project?
They did, I believe. Go ahead.
Through the chair. So this is a matching grant. So VIU is putting forward $30,000, and we're putting forward $30,000 from tipping fees, and we're getting a lot of other in-kind contributions.
Okay, any further comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, that brings us to item E, which is the bylaw for R1033-2, amendment of tipping fees for rope and netting. Jenny, if you wanted to introduce it, please go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this went to the West Coast Committee last week, and essentially we've been doing a rope and netting pilot with Ocean Legacy, who's been working with Surfrider for a number of years to look at ways to recycle ocean plastic, which is a really difficult product to recycle. They're expanding this to look at the rope and netting, which is not necessarily lost to the ocean, but it's taken in by the fish farms and companies directly to the landfill. And we've been landfilling that at about like 17% sometimes of our commercial stream is going into the landfill. And so Ocean Legacy we're hauling that to Vancouver. It's getting processed. They're developing new technologies and methods to process this. So now that we've been running it for a little while, we found that the price is around $190 a ton. We've been charging $120, not knowing what the price would be. And we're recommending that we increase that to $150 and then revisit it in about 6 to 9 months, because we feel that as the project continues, those costs are going to come down. And so we just want to move it up slowly, not too hard, too fast, but we do need to have a little bit more cost recovery on that. Ocean Legacy also has some other grants that will recover some of the costs on their side.
Thank you. Okay, Director Roberts.
Yes, thank you for that. As we discussed at the West Coast Committee meeting, this is an extremely worthwhile project. It was really nice to see what's happening to some of the rope and netting that is being taken in and recycled. And with that, I would like to make this recommendation.
First reading, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director McNabb. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. And second reading? So moved. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Steer. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. And third reading. Thank you, Director Roberts. Seconded by Director Shannon. Usually no comments on third reading, but I think that's just Parliament. All those in favor? Motion carried. And lastly, adoption. Thank you, Director Roberts. Second by everyone, Dr. Bodnar. Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, that brings us to item F, which is Cascadia Air scheduled flights at the Long Beach Airport.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This Cascadia Air is requesting to set up scheduled flights at both Abra and the Long Beach Airport. There's very different setups for those airports, so we've split this up into two issues. At the Long Beach Airport, we already have scheduled flights. We have all the infrastructure in place. So we only need to issue them a letter of authorization, and then they can begin operating, similar to a chartered airline that's doing that currently. As their service expands at the Long Beach Airport, then staff will work with them to set up a lease for a kiosk, and if assuming that their business grows, and we can support them. With Abra, there's a lot of details that we need to work out and potential cost implications. So staff are working on the details of that, and we'll be bringing a report forward on that issue.
Will that report go through the advisory committee first, or just kind of at the same time?
Either the advisory committee or the ABB, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Okay, thank you. We have a motion. Hey, Director Roberts? It's just issue a letter authorizing. You'd like to make that motion? Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Steer. Okay, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. That's good. Okay, that brings us to item G, which is the LBA, lease renewals.
Thank you,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair. We have 8 short-term lease renewals that are coming up for renewal this year. We've been taking them to the board and the committees one by one, and we've just decided to combine them. We have a new updated lease template, which we've attached. We'll be using that for each and every one of the leases. We took this to the West Coast Committee, and all of these were supported, and the recommendation moved forward. We did have some further discussion in camera regarding the Devon Transport lease, and we have modified the agreement that will be going for all of the leases, but especially for Devon Transport, which is budget car rental, that requires 90% of any revenues that are collected for airport improvement fees or anything of that nature that is related to costs at the airport, that those are remitted to the ACRD. So we're making sure that that's resolved. Any question?
And that just goes into the lease, or is it a separate agreement? Just into the lease?
Into the lease, standard lease language.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? So I am loath to make a director read out points 1 to 8. So perhaps just saying that you move the motion as recommended, then that would be admissible. Thank you, Director Roberts. So move. Thank you. Do we have a seconder, Director Beckett? I would remind anyone who happens to watch this in the future that you can download the agenda at the same way that you get to the YouTube comments. Okay, any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. All right, so the agreements have been approved. That brings us to the short-term lease for the Coastal Hive. Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this, the Coastal Hive came to the board about a year ago, and they were looking to do a long-term lease, and they had quite a large proposal to start doing greenhouses and food production on the West Coast. They've been working on their proposal and come up with something that is a little bit more feasible for them to get started immediately. So what they're asking for is a short-term lease, and they're setting up just 2 Caterpillar greenhouses. It's going to be self-sufficient so that there's no water services required or power service required. They will still have the electric fencing in place, and they're hoping to grow their project basically through the years. So we're happy to support them, and this went to the West Coast Committee and was recommended that the board approve.
Thank you for that. Any comments or questions? Just a minute, I'm going to cough. Okay, Director Roberts?
I would move that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors approve entering into a 3-year term lease agreement effective April 1st, 2021 until March 31st, 2024 with the Coastal Hive at the Long Beach Airport at a rate of $1,398 per year plus GST and annual BC CPI increase.
Good, thank you. Seconded by Director Cole. Do we have any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, that brings us to item I, which is a Salmon Beach withdrawal from, I think, the transit service. Is that correct? Okay, so we'll have to look at, the materials should be included in your email, although I don't have a specific time date reference for that. I don't know who's going to speak to it, though. Please go ahead.
Mr. Chair, the Salmon Beach, or probably the West Coast Committee considered this matter, and I think the presumption, I think from Director Roberts at least, was that this matter was coming forward to the board. The committee did not pass a resolution in that regard, so Director Roberts, I believe, would like to speak to this matter, but we've summarized what an appropriate resolution would be should the board want to have staff investigate this matter. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I believe it was sent at 8:52. I think I found it. Dr. Roberts, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, as I just received this latest letter and this concern, and yeah, I don't have any further information on this. I would like to have staff look into it a little bit more and determine exactly what the implications are. I don't recall exactly what happened at the Area Planning Commission meeting, but some of these things are coming in late. So I'd like to see what comes in and do a review on this a little bit further, other than issuing the development variance permit.
Do you have the recommended motion in front of you? I can read it out for you if that's the appropriate.
Mr. Chair, I think Director Roberts has got item 2 late in the agenda. The amended item is with respect to the potential evaluation of Salmon Beach Committee being removed from the West Coast Transit. And that was sent out by email this morning.
Oh, yes.
And perhaps Wendy can tell us what time that email was.
8:52.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
At least that's when I received it. Director Steer, did you have any comments while we're going through there?
No, I was just going to bring up that I think Director Roberts might have been referring to something else than the West Coast Transit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's ahead of us there. So there's an email with the motion that's stated, Director Roberts. It says that the West Coast Committee recommended to the ACRD Board of Directors that staff investigate the financial impacts of removing a portion of Electoral Area C, Long Beach, from the West Coast Transit Service based on the areas being removed provided by Director Roberts. So is that something that requires a motion now? And can we, Wendy, thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, the actual motion is because the West Coast Committee just received the report. So Director Roberts asked that this come forward. So the motion that we were recommending is that the ACRD Board of Directors instruct staff to investigate the financial impacts of removing the Salmon Beach portion of Electoral Area C from the West Coast Transit Service.
Apologies, I was reading the March 3rd report when it should have been reading the March 10th report.
And Mr. Chair, just to be clear, staff are recommending that if that's something the board wishes to pursue. Yeah. So we're not recommending this course of action. We're recommending this wording if that's something the board wants to investigate. Thank you.
Okay, so the recommended motion is that we do do investigate, which is what Director Roberts had already stated.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll take that as the motion. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Bodnar. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Sorry, Director Cole, did I miss you at all? No? No? Okay. Item 9.1. Oh, we're into planning matters now, if that helps. That brings us to 9.1A. Mr. Erg, if you would.
I will. The first application is for a variance at Salmon Beach. Now this is to increase the height of an existing storage shed from to 14.24 feet from the zoning bylaw height maximum of 12 feet. So staff are of the opinion this is a minor variance. However, there has been some objections from neighboring property owners following the notification. And I would just note in the staff report that's attached, this originally went to the Long Beach APC meeting on the 25th, and there was not very many APC members there. It was taken back a second time on February 2nd. There was where the recommendation, there was only one member there, so we didn't have quorum. But the ABC member present supported the plan to remove the attached porch as a condition of the building permit for the storage building and recommend proceeding with public input. We've done that, and again, there's 6 letters attached and then an additional one that came as a late item. And I will answer any questions, and I expect Director Roberts has some comments to make as well.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? And if not, Director Roberts, you can just go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for that. And through the chair to Mr. Erg. I'd like an opportunity to review these letters a little more in detail. And actually, I'll be going out there this weekend, and I want to review the site again and see if there's any other changes. So at this point, this is what I was referring to earlier. Sorry. Was that we not issue this permit at this point.
But I think the appropriate motion, if the board still wants to consider it, or the recommendation would be to consider it at a subsequent meeting, is just defer this application until the, and we'll bring it back on the March 24th, to the March 24th meeting.
Is that all right, Director Roberts?
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, so moved. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director McNabb. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. So we'll defer this one to the next meeting. All right, item B is another one. Please go ahead, Mike.
Yes, so this is another variance application at for Salmon Beach. This is a variance to a front yard setback, and the reason for the variance request is to maintain the 30-meter or 100-foot setback from Wendy Creek, which also goes nearby the property. This was recommended by a geotech engineer that was hired by the property owners. There is, again, we did the neighbor notification. We have received some correspondence objecting to the variance in general. I would note that this one does differ from the one we were just talking about just before this in the agenda, in that the applicants are planning their build. The rationale is they want to maintain a safe distance, and I always feel where it's appropriate to stay as far away from creeks as possible. So they offer a good rationale for it, and staff are recommending that this variance be approved.
Thank you. Dr. Roberts?
Yes, thank you. One of the issues that has been raised with this particular variance permit is that they were looking at having the ability to build up to within 3 feet, was it, Mike, of the highway or of the road? At any rate, after hearing the discussions, with the candidate, they were saying that they wanted the flexibility to move it up. And as Mike noted, that there is a setback requirement to the creek as well. So are we still there?
I don't know. I think Mr. Erg, you need to unmute.
Yep, sorry, I'm here.
So Mike, did you hear the comment that I made about the 3 feet from the road?
Yeah, and the way the variance is drafted, it would be 8 feet, not 3. So the applicants may have initially wanted to go to 3, but the proposal went ahead as a variance to 8. So it's 8 feet from the front yard.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. And after seeing the engineer's report that they have been compliant, so that I would move that the development permit application for 1170 Fifth Avenue, Salmon Beach, that's DVC 2009 Huggins, that permit be approved.
Okay, thank you for that. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Bodner. Do we have any further comments? Seeing none, all those, oh, Director Shannon, please go ahead.
Thanks. I just have a question of clarification. Perhaps Mr. Erg or Director Roberts can answer this. Looking at the map for this property on page 155 of the agenda, is the creek the one that's shown going through the properties on the other side, not the subject property itself?
No, so in the Salmon Beach area, we don't have as accurate of mapping for the stream. So this comes from old provincial trim mapping. So the stream isn't necessarily exactly in that location. So it is closer than it appears.
Okay, thank you. I was just wondering why it was needed a variance if it wasn't through that property, but thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Okay, that brings us to item C. Sprout Lake.
This is the last variance application that we have on the agenda today. So this is for Glapstein. This is a variance to reduce the front yard setback from 40 feet to 19.42 feet, and a height variance to allow a second story above a garage, which would increase the height to 19.5 feet from the bylaw requirements of 17.8 feet. I know in discussions from the previous, when the board originally looked at this, just in relation to the road, it certainly appears to be much farther away. It's much farther, not appears, it is much farther away from the traveled portion of the road, but the road allowance is within, the 19.42, 19.42 feet from the property line. It's certainly safe this way, and we have not received any correspondence from the public, and staff recommends that the board issue this development variance. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Director Cote?
Thank you. I don't believe that the footprint is changing at all. I think it's just the setback for the height. So it makes no significant changes at all. So at this time, I would like to make a motion that the Board of Directors issue a development variance permit DVD 20008.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Director Beckett, thank you. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, thank you for that. That brings us to item 10, reports. 10.1 are staff reports. So that brings us to a verbal update from the EOC. Charlie,
Give
please
me
go
1
ahead.
second. I'm Bear for Heather again. So to start off with, the provincial declarations are both still in place. The state of emergency is due to expire on the 16th of this month. It will likely be extended. The provincial health emergency is at the direction of the provincial health officer and will continue to on as things go. These numbers I'm going to give you are based on yesterday's numbers. In BC, as of March 9th, there are 550 new cases for a total of 4,869 active cases. Island Health, there were 7 new cases for 246 active cases. Dr. Benusik gave an update today. The moving average for Vancouver Island is 24, which is pretty high for the island, he says, but best case scenario for many health authorities, so it's not all that bad. In the past 2 weeks, there's been a little activity in the Alberni Clay Court Regional District area, mostly due to a confined cluster in Tofino that has been managed, and local health people have said that it was managed very well. And then a small cluster in Alberni with the underhoused and homeless, which has also been managed and has moved on from there. So relative hotspots on the island are Comox Valley and Campbell River. There is no concern for sustained community transmission on the island. And of the 8 total identified variants, there is no concern for local spread. Vaccinations to date, BC has 343,000 total doses given out. Island Health has given 62,000 doses for 50,000 people provided at least 1 dose, which accounts for about 7% of the island population or Island Health population. Phase 1 is complete and we're well into phase 2. The age rollout starts this week. Most people are aware of that. The Alberni Athletic Hall is the main site for the Alberni region and will be in operation from March 15th until October the 31st. At this time, those are the dates given, 9:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. And for the West Coast, Tofino Public Health Unit will be in operation from Monday, March the 15th until Thursday, April 15th. Dr. Lund locally expects that the setup at the Athletic Hall is very good and will meet all the needs locally. Everyone is also cautioning people and hoping everyone will spread the word to be patient and follow the posted guidelines so as not to overwhelm the call centers. Everyone will get their turn. And all this info is being shared by the ACRD social media. What else do I have here? The smaller communities of 4,000 people and under, and with travel restrictions or travel where they're over 3 hours from a hospital, such as Bamfield, Ucluelet, Tofino, and some of the smaller Indigenous communities in the region will receive total vaccines for the whole population, with the Island Health moving in and doing it over several days. And that is about it for the COVID update, if anybody has any questions.
That's great. I'm especially happy to see that the communities like Bamfield, Tofino, Ucluelet are getting just whole adult population vaccinations. That will make things better for tourism season too, I believe. I have Dr. Paulson, and then is there anybody else seeing that? Go ahead, Dr. Paulson.
You may or may not have any information on this, but I know in Alberta that they've expanded the vaccination centers to places like Shoppers Drug Mart and stuff like that. Would there be any indication in the future that may be the case in British Columbia, especially when we move into phase 3 and 4? You may or may not have any information on that. But
yeah, the only information I've seen on that is what the provincial website says, and that's to keep an eye on it because things are changing daily as the vaccine becomes available, and that they're going to continue to push it out and speed things up as best they can.
I think that's an important thing to watch, though, Director Paulson. I think that's a good plan, and it's extending beyond pharmacies now, talking about taking over some vaccination duties. I remember seeing, I can't remember which group of theaters, but the movie theaters are putting forward that they use their spaces for that as well, which may or may not be a good idea. Okay, thank you, Charlie, for your report. Is there any other comments? We can have a motion to receive the reports from the staff. Thank you, Director Cole, seconded by Director McNabb. You have a comment, Director McNabb? You're still muted, though. There we go.
There we go. Just on this report with regards to the container at the airport, I'm just a little nervous about that, given some of the other issues the ministry is having with regards to occupation at the airport. I don't know if anybody's kind of thought about that, but I just like to voice that.
Mr. Chair, this will not interfere with the operations of the airport. So in our view, we're on solid ground with that. We do have an active conversation with the province, and we are not completely aligned on every topic with the province with respect to the operations of the airport, but we are working through that. And we think this is fairly benign. Thank you.
Is that all good, Director McNabb, or do you have a follow-up?
Sure.
All right. Thank you, Douglas. I think that brings us to, actually, I think I missed if we did actually move the receipt. Did we move the receipt? I think we did, because all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Alrighty, so that brings us to committee reports. So if you'll just excuse me, this is a verbal update from myself, and I'm going to go off the notes we had during our meeting. So on March 5th, we had a committee of the whole meeting that was with Director Osborne, with Minister Osborne, but not as Minister Osborne, but rather as our MLA. So Josie came to meet with us and wanted to know what was on our mind in regards to interfacing with the province on various aspects. There were a few items that were in camera, so I won't report on those. But for the most part, we had, I believe, 9 or so items that we spoke to. It was only about an hour's meeting, so we didn't get into too much detail, but I will list off the topics here. We did have a conversation about emergency management and the proposed financial guidelines in regards to how that's being put forward. And she replied that that was something that was known and would be followed up on. The next item is the multi-use path on the West Coast, and that the grant was unsuccessful. So we're wondering what the next steps will be from the province on that side. And the response there was that she will continue to work with us on identifying potential areas for receiving a grant or money to finish those last few kilometers. Third, we talked and had a good conversation about unauthorized camping, and while we outlined the nature of the challenges before us in the many and varied ways that they exist, not just in regards to illegal camping in places where people just want to have recreation, like on the West Coast, but there are also long-term illegal camping going on in places like Boot Lagoon. In addition, there are illegal camping concerns in regards to people who are homeless. Dr. Coots, you might want to mute yourself. Okay. From there, we also had a discussion, and we wanted to demonstrate that we were acutely aware with each other and in the context of the province that anything we were to do or the province to do should be aware and respectful of the fact that we don't want anything we do in one location to just kind of push the challenges onto another another electoral area, another district, another municipality. So the conversation there was that this is a good start of a large conversation, and there was some praise for the regional district to convene so many stakeholders together. We think the next steps were forming a working group, probably a leadership working group and a technical working group, but we'll see where we go from there. And it was kind of left at that. Then we talked about the Bamfield Sewer project in regards to the just how we see Bamfield developing over time, especially given the fact that Hooyet and the province are working together on upgrading the Bamfield Road. And therefore, we have to plan ahead in regards to how that capacity is going to be used and what we need to do to make sure that that gets put forward. There were some items that we would requesting help on, because in order for us to do this right, to do this with Hooyet, we do need to ensure that we create a liquid waste management plan. Something that we feel that we can get help from the province on creating, because in order to really do anything, we should create a plan first that takes into account all of the things that one would consider given the projected increase in demand for liquid waste capacity, not just what's existing now, and how that will interface with what Hooyet is planning into the future. Because this is something where we both need to step into the future together, and we can't kind of just do it without really considering the impacts. There was some openness to that, especially on the side of ensuring that we do have a plan in place. There were no guarantees of funding. However, the environmental side of things does beg some good questions that I think she's going to investigate. That brings us into the fifth item, which is the public access to private forest lands. So the pilot project with Mosaic was discussed, and it was mostly just talking about how we look forward to ensuring that we take the necessary steps to see that this pilot project is successful. So I think what we were concerned about very much so was ensuring that people are aware of the pilot project and that it's successful, so that we can try to do this in a wider area as time goes by, and suddenly we'll have much more of the territory opened up for recreational or nature use as well. My apologies. That brings us to the Tofino General Hospital and the West Coast General Hospital renovation project. We didn't spend a lot of time on this because Director Osborne herself, as mayor and as vice chair and as a director in the regional district, were very, very closely involved in both the Tofino General Hospital project and the West Coast General Hospital renovation project, which I think was her first major announcement as a minister. So we wanted to make sure that we touched on this because these are things that are quite important. And from there, we did talk about the Alberni Valley Aquatic Center project. And that was mostly, we were exploring the process together. And this was something that she was made aware of, and we would promise to keep each other involved in. And so when we're talking about keeping staff involved in touch, we were talking very much about her constituency office, not necessarily her minister's office. So we have to treat those two things as kind of separate as time goes by. It was a really positive experience. Of course, we all know that it was going to be. We just have to contend with the fact now that she has the whole province to represent as a member of cabinet, but she still has her responsibilities as a representative of our area. And so we need to make sure that those two things are held separate and held fairly. And so far, it seems as though that the discussion we had with her on this one checks that off completely. So when we do follow up with Minister Osborne rather than our representative Osborne, we'll make sure to raise the issues that make sense and apply the appropriate pressure. That being said, nearly everyone here was on that call. So if there are any items that you'd like to highlight yourselves, please go ahead. And if not, you can move to receive the report. Thank you. Director Cole?
I'm just curious as to, we had said that there was going to be a working group. I don't know if I'm too off topic here, but we were going to make a working group. And did we have a time or date when those peoples and that timeline would be announced for meeting?
Go ahead.
We've been busy with agenda since that meeting, Mr. Chair, so we have not got to that yet. But if any of the directors think of a party that wasn't included in the working group last time, please email that to us. In the meantime, we will, as soon as we can put our minds to it, we will start looking for dates. Thank you.
Yeah, there were some nations that were not present that I think should be, especially given the fact that if we're going to be cognizant of pushing the problem onto other jurisdictions, then we just need to include them as well. Dr. Cole, did you have a follow-up? And then I saw Dr. Steer put his hand
It was just what you said, the Taloquit weren't able, just the timing wasn't, things were happening. So just they'd be a key player for sure.
I mean, it's the same thing with the West Coast Police. I mean, you had Yuki and Port Alberni kind of going, well, we can kind of talk for them, but we shouldn't. And it's just awkward
times that weekend.
Yeah.
So it would be
awkward timing all around, but we can follow up and make sure that they attend. Dr. Steer, go ahead.
Yeah, that was the same. I just those parties were included in those conversations.
Yeah. Well, the other RCMP group, they gave it a college try, but it's not the same, right? So the context matters. That's pretty much it without getting into the in-camera items. So with that, could we have a motion to receive the report? Thank you, Director Roberts and Director Shannon. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, this is where we're coming to a mea culpa on my part. So on item 8D, in my haze, I'd overlooked the fact that I am a member of the Board of Governors for VIU, and that the decision that was made at VIU for the monitoring should be made without my presence. So what I'd like to do is just re-rack and have Director McNabb just take over and redo it. Because I think that's probably about the fairest thing that we can do here. So Janice, if you could kick me out, that would be great. And bring me back in when you're all finished.
Okay, so first of all,
I'm not gone yet.
Oh, you're not gone yet. I thought that was just a background picture. So anyhow, first of all, we have to rescind this motion that previously we had. This is the first time doing that, so I'm not quite sure what that procedure is. I suspect that somebody makes a motion to rescind, there's a seconder, and we carry on. If that's wrong, somebody speak up. Nope, nobody's speaking up, so we're good. So we've got Director Roberts and Director Beckett. Is that a mover and a seconder?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, are there any comment on that? Director Cote?
Thank you. I'd like the motion read.
To rescind the motion with regards to the.
We're not saying what this is, so I'd just like to.
Okay, the motion with regards to the VIU participation with the Alberni Valley landfill and gas monitoring. That's the one we're rescinding. Okay. Everybody understand that? Everybody says yes. Okay, any other comments? All in favor to rescind? Anybody opposed? Don't see anybody. Okay, so now we will need a motion in favor of this project. So that's Director Roberts and Director Paulson. And are there any comments with regards to this in the absence of our chair? No, I don't see any. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Don't see anybody. Carried. Okay, we're going to invite the chair back.
Already. Okay, thank you for that. And apologies once more for my oversight. That brings us to, I believe, late business and question period. So I'm going to ask Ms. Thompson, did anyone contact us through responses at all?
No, there's been no questions or comments from the public today respecting the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so the next step, and there's a couple steps in front of us now, is recess for the hospital district, and then later we will reconvene and go in camera for the in-camera portions of the meeting. So could we have a motion to recess the meeting, please? Thank you, Director Paulson, seconded by Director McNabb. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, we are now in recess. Okay.
I'd like to call the meeting of the March 10th meeting of the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional Hospital District to order and recognize that we are meeting on mostly Nunavut lands, but scattered all over the Vancouver Island with many others, and that our head office is Tishat and Hapetchesett lands that we need to respect them all. And so I'd like an approval of the agenda, please. Dr. Shannon, Dr. Paulson, any additions to the agenda? All in favor? Anybody opposed? Nope, we're carrying on. And with the adoption of the minutes of the February 10th meeting of the hospital district. Director Bodner and Director Beckett, anything in there you don't like? Nope. Okay, all in favor? Anybody opposed? Carried on. We have no correspondence, but we do have a bit of a lengthy discussion with regards to the annual budget. And maybe, is Terry in there? Yes, she is. Terry, are you going to handle this?
Yeah, sorry. Hi. So we've discussed the budget for the hospital district a few times now, and staff have presented it at the $1.8 million requisition that will start to build a reserve fund. Specifically, we're guessing the next major project is going to be the Tofino General Hospital. Island Health has also requested a little bit more funding than the 550 they ask for each year. However, there was some unallocated funding from the past or some projects that they had done that came in under budget that give us the budget room at the 550 to achieve all that they're asking for this year, which is actually $815,000 worth of projects. So as we discussed this morning, if the board is wanting to look at some mitigation options, I did over lunch crunch some numbers that I could share on the screen if they're helpful for you. Otherwise, staff are recommending that we adopt the bylaw today at the 1.8 million. But if you would like further discussion, especially in relation to the hospital district budget, and you would like some more time, then we will have to set another hospital district meeting for a date before March 31st. It would probably make the most sense to do it on the 24th, which is the same day as the regional district, but that's those are our options. And I look forward to your questions.
Okay, with regards to that input, has anybody got any comments with regards to that? Director Shannon.
Thank you. If Terry has some numbers that she can present, I would like to see them. As it looks like, I'm just going to page, now I lost it. Oh, page 18 of our agenda, where it looks like with a 1.8 million tax requisition, we're looking at, we'd be putting into the budget, we'd be contributing 870,000 to the Tofino General Hospital Reserve from the operating fund, correct?
Yeah, that was a little vague when I looked at it too. Terry, could you maybe clue us in on that?
So the reserve fund at 1.8 million requisition would put in about 870,000 in 2021. And if we left the requisition flat at 1.8 million between now and 2025, it'll grow to be about 6.2 million, 6.27 million. That is assuming that Island Health isn't coming for like additional funds over the 550 each year. I have in the meantime shared my screen to show. So what I did was I took the total requisition amounts that are based on the updated numbers from the regional district from the changes that were made this morning. And so these are what your percentages are in this column D based on the 1.8 million. So if we moved to 1.7 million as a regional hospital district requisition, this just gives you an idea of how that would change each area and can show you, like, for example, Bamfield would go from 5.26% to 4.73%. And if we did a $1.6 million requisition, then Bamfield would drop to 4.2%. So that just gives you an example of each of your areas. Can you guys see that, or is it too small? Do you need me to enlarge it?
I can see it.
Okay. Yeah, does that answer your question, Director Shannon?
Yes, thank you. So I'm open to this year for the budget to reducing it. But I would like other directors' input. I know we've talked about this. As I mentioned earlier in our committee of the whole, I'm struggling with the tax requisition just overall for the area. I know that staff have been busy. There's been a lot going on despite the pandemic. Just finding the balance. And if we can do stuff now where we're putting this away for the future, I 100% get that. But if we can help a little bit, I would like to see us try and make that happen. And I'm just open to input from everybody else. Thanks.
So Director Roberts, get your hands up, or?
Yes, question through the chair to Terry. Long Beach Area C, 11.04%. Why is that so high?
That is your overall increase, and most of that's because of Salmon Beach transportation. So that's what I mean. Like that column, like column C represents your total regional district and hospital district combined requisition amount. So it just sums up those tables that are in the beginning of the financial plan package, plus the email I sent you at lunchtime that had the updated amounts. It just summarizes that amount. And like looking at Salmon, or looking at Long Beach in particular, your total for an average household is going up $146 average, but 125, almost 126 of that is related to Salmon Beach services, most specifically to do with Salmon Beach transportation and the road upgrade projects that are planned for the next 5+ years.
Isn't that part of the parcel tax for Salmon Beach?
So this is included, this is everything. This is the taxes overall. So parcel tax and tax requisition, I have combined all into one. It's, well, how much money are we requesting in terms of taxation from the regional district and the hospital district combined?
So, Mr. Chair, if I could just add to that, that's one of the peculiarities of regional district models where you have services that don't necessarily include an entire region. So that $124 increase wouldn't apply to a house in Millstream. So Millstream's increase in Area C wouldn't be the same as that 11%. It would probably be a number that was substantially lower than that. Maybe, I'm just guessing, but 2 or 3% perhaps, just because so much of that increase is carried around the Salmon Beach area. So this is sort of a big picture generalization of all of the taxation attributed to Long Beach as compared to how much was raised in taxation last year. Same for every area actually here.
Yeah, I'm a little confused in that. I think I'll have to talk to Terry about this at some point to get a real clear picture of that. Thank you.
Yeah, it is complicated. I mean, especially that piece. So, I mean, speaking for myself and looking at the impact on Beaver Creek, I mean, I wouldn't be in favor of adjusting our reserve amount. It just doesn't, the impact isn't enough. My thinking, if I was going to make any adjustment, it would still be to that strategic reserve part of it, which isn't hospitals, but you know, I think that could impact in the same way without creating future problems with reserves for the hospital additions. As we can see in the way that VIHA is approaching a lot of things these days, they're relying on community funding versus their funding, as well as our reserve funding. So they just announced the Surrey Hospital, which they were the small player in all of the funding. The foundation took up a huge chunk, and the city of Surrey took up the other one. So the province's part, because of the foundation, was way less than 60%. And so, I mean, that's kind of another look at all of that, but I think we need to be having a substantial amount of reserve in play for these future costs, and then as well as leveraging it with financing. But anybody else want to jump in there? I can only see about 5 of you, so you might have to yell. You might want to drop this now, Terry. Maybe that'll help us out. Oh, there we go. I couldn't see you before. Director Stern.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to point out, and I think you've made the case very strong, Director McNabb. The amount of the requisition would have very small impacts on the overall amount of taxation that the individual electoral areas and municipalities might face. And that we also had earlier in the conversations previous to the fact that we will be bringing this topic in the third quarter, coming for the next financial budget discussions, and that we at that time might have an appropriate discussion about what the appropriate levels of contributions to reserves are, And I think that's the appropriate place to have the conversation. And that at that time, if there is a more wholesome discussion around those reserves and the contributions to it, I think that might be the appropriate place. Thank you.
Okay, so we got two options here. We can sort of receive this report and deal with it at our next, or at a special hospital district meeting on the 24th, or we can move the motion to leave the allocation the way it is and proceed. So whoever wants to put their hand up in a big hurry, that's the way we'll start. Director Steer.
Yeah, I would like to move the motion as written.
Got a seconder there? Director Bodnar. Any further discussion on this? Phew, where's my button? That was easy. Okay. Oh, Director Shannon, are you discussing or we've?
Yeah, thank you. If we're contributing $870,000, I would still like to look at a requisition of 1.7 versus 1.8 for this year to help. I know it doesn't seem like it makes a big difference to the taxpayers, but I really think every little bit's going to help. And I mean, we're all trying to do the best we can here with what we have. But yeah, I'm just going to state that again. Thank you.
Well, you know, sort of on the conversation with regards to those strategic reserves and the other accounts, they make more of an impact because the only people who are paying those are the participants. So the adjustment of the hospital reserves makes less of an impact because we're all spread out, like it's all over, everybody's paying it. So so that's why I suggest that we maybe look at that, you know, maybe us as rural directors look at that and see what that impact is. And then we can always call a meeting, you know, if we need to have another board meeting beforehand, we can call it before the next meeting. Director Shannon.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, my concern with that was, and what I liked about the stabilization is looking at taxes for 2022, 2023, and that substantial increase that we would see. And I mean, I don't want to defer. It's hard because I don't want it to make it look like it's a huge increase next year, where I'm anticipating this year we're going to be in the same kind of boat where there's still going to be struggles with people working versus with things that are still operating like transit and administration versus, I'm using that loosely, we're putting away money for a future project with this.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, on the motions in front of us, which is the first bullet of the recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so the second bullet. Do you want to carry that?
Just to confirm, Mr. Chair, this is second reading.
Correct? Yes, the second reading.
To bylaw 131. Thank you.
Yep, sorry.
So moved.
So Dr. Cote and Director Jack. Okay, second reading. Any questions on that? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Gotcha. Carried. And the third reading. Director Jack moving and Director Stern. Okay, questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the final reading.
Of adoption.
Okay, and I think it was Director Cote and Director Steer, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, on adoption, any discussion? Is that discussion, Director Paulson, or moving? Nope, that's voting. All in favor? Now you can put your hand up. Opposed? Thanks. Carried. Okay. Sorry, let me get back to the agenda here. Okay, so we got through that. Now we got reports. So at Banfield Health Center, Dr. Beckett.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Nurse Donna is officially retiring and maybe coming back part-time. It's wonderful news for the community. As Charlie pointed out earlier on, the health clinic is going to be receiving VHA staff to administer the vaccine to the Banfield community very, very soon, which is wonderful news. The VHA has approved a second nurse to start working during the summer when we have an influx of tourists. VHA is looking to upgrade technology in the building. And I asked at that point in time when Nurse Heather was telling me this, I asked about the use of telehealth and how often it's being used. And ironically enough, during COVID, she was saying that it's being used less because many patients, many of the folks coming in are using their own electronic device to meet with their GPs and their specialists. And I think somewhere down the road, which is a positive COVID thing, somewhere down the road would be interesting to get some statistics from VHA as to the increased use, the benefits, and also the risks associated with not having patient contact, physical contact with physicians and specialists. And that's my report, sir.
Thank you very much. Alberta Clayoquot Continuing Care Society, Director Polson can help me out with this. A little hard to report on because the actual agenda isn't all that clear, but they did it. It was announced that we have now directors of care in both Fir Park and Echo new placements, which is great. And the accreditation by CARF, C-A-R-F, don't ask me what that means, it was explained, but I think I missed it, is a 3-year accreditation, which is the maximum they will accredit, and which is a pretty neat thing for the second time around. And the report on the financial side is still, not the greatest. The province hasn't coughed up for capital expenditures, hasn't recognized the requirement for overtime because of COVID restrictions, not being able to use staff from the other facility to backfill, and it continues to put financial pressures on, as well as the capital expense part of it, where things need to happen, and they need to happen every year in maintenance, and there has been no announcement by the province, by the Island Health, with regards to capital expense input. So I think that was pretty well it. I don't know if you got anything else there, Ron.
Just on the good news side, just thought I'd mention that the Continuing Care Society received the second installment of what they termed the hero pay, and I think that's good news for the staff there, and that'll be distributed in the next little while. And I think that was probably a program that was announced about 8 or 9 months ago, and the payments finally came through. But good news for the staff, and just maybe a quick comment about staff burnout and the toll that it's taking on staff. They're just seeing that it's very, very, very difficult for the caregivers right now, and I think they're kind of at the end of the rope. But also, there's light at the end of the tunnel. And the other upside is, I think that pretty well, I think we're virtually 100% staff and residents have been vaccinated now, so that helps to alleviate some of the worry around the place. But just a couple of things.
It was actually 91%, so a pretty good figure compared to some other places. So that's that. And on to West Coast Native Healthcare Society, Dr. Cote.
Thank you. Through the chair, I have no report. West Coast Native Healthcare has not been having regular meetings and have not been reporting out. So I will reach out and see if I can find out anything. I do know, though, that they are proceeding with plans on expansion. 40 units of housing. So I'll try to have a report for the next meeting. Thank you.
Tofino General Hospital. Who's got that? West Coast Directors. Tom.
Mr. Starrett summarized most of my report on the vaccine rollout on the West Coast, so that was very helpful. Thank you. The previous projects that I've been talking about in the last meetings, those are all being reported on as they're on track. And the one big thing that we're still working on, of course, is the housing issue, and we still struggle with housing the staff that are needed to run the facilities. We know this is a regional issue that continues to come to the forefront. We are actively working on trying to house those important service workers in our community, but it is a struggle. Thank you.
Yeah, if you weren't using that room for an office, you could probably use it to rent it out.
Yeah, this is Josie's old office that I paid. We will have someone in here in the next week, I'm hoping. Yeah, they were elected. We just had our election, so they should be in here soon.
Cool. The Albany Clayoquot Health Network, Dr. Cote.
Thank you. The Health Network has been attending the 2021 Community Health Networks Learning Days and Healthy Communities Forum. It was on last Thursday and will be concluding tomorrow. And that's all I have to report right now.
And West Coast General Hospital, I haven't been able to contact them at this point, so I don't know. Director Minions, do you have you had any chats with them?
No, and nothing to add really on top of what the EOC update has kind of provided health-wise for the community. I did want to just add additional to Director Cote's comments on West Coast Native Healthcare Society and Rainbow Gardens that the city has approved for their second project, the housing agreement now. So that was a significant step that BC Housing and the city both had to sign off on that agreement. So they are very close to being ready to start their construction now on that second, or I guess we call it the third building, but on the next 40 units. So really exciting. They've just done fantastic work in providing housing in that area. And we're really excited to see their next project moving forward, which is 40 units of affordable housing. Thank you.
Great. Awesome. So other reports, this is a bit of chair, what do you call it? Ability to vary. Just 2 minutes ago, I got a notice that North Island 911, all of the participants have voted for the change in allocation, and that's important because otherwise there would have been a whole mess. So that's good news. Okay, so anybody got any other reports that come out of the blue? I just might mention I've been forwarding the I and Director Minions get a and Director Jack get a notification from Island Health pretty much weekly that they ask us not to distribute to the public. I have been forwarding that to emergency preparedness, and I'm asking you if it's down, you get it from them, please do not send it to the public. So they don't want to steal in their thunder on them. So it's just keep it for your own information, and as it's released, then you can deal with it. Okay, unfinished business, I don't think we have any. Late business, we have none that I know of, nothing popping up. And question period, have we got anybody on?
No, Mr.
Nope.
Chair, there are no nobody on this meeting and no questions.
Okay, and a motion to adjourn. Director Paulson, Director Beckett, all in favor? There we go, done and over.
Okay, so that brings us back to the original agenda. We're reconvening, and this will be the time where we will go in camera. So what I plan on doing is reading out the in-camera reasons, and then once we move, we will have a quick bio break for maybe 10 minutes because I think some of us need to do that. So I'll do that now. So the motion to close the meeting to the public as per the community charter under sections 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the regional district or another position appointed by the regional district. 2, 91B, personal information about an identified individual who is being considered for a regional district award or honor or has been offered to provide a gift to the regional district or on the condition of anonymity. Item 3, 91C, labor relations and other employee relations. 91J, information that is prohibited or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under section 21 of FOIPA. The head of a public body must refuse to disclose to an applicant information in the disclosure of which would reasonably be expected to harm significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the negotiating position of the third party. And next is 91K, which is negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a regional district service that are at their preliminary stages and that in the view of the board could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the regional district if they were held in public. And those are the reasons. Could we have a motion to go in camera, please? Thank you, Director Cole, seconded by Director McNabb. All those in favor? Motion carried.